big shake-up at the RBA.
Yes, indeed. Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers has released findings of the first formal review into the Reserve Bank since the 1990s. He's calling it a
roadmap, a plan for the future of the Reserve Bank of Australia.
So that we can
delivers the right decisions and makes the right calls for the Australian economy.
Politicians love a roadmap.
Can't get enough of a roadmap. The review made 51 recommendations which can be summed up in 5 easy-to-remember groups.
Ensuring we have a clear and robust monetary policy framework.
Well, it's hard to be a bank without one of those.
Effective monetary policy decision-making and accountability.
That's political speak for we think you're f***ed up and we want to blame you for it.
An open and dynamic Reserve Bank that facilitates constructive internal debate. More robust governance arrangements.
That's code for everyone hates RBA Governor Philip Lowe.
And steps to ensure the RBA leaders drive institutional and cultural change.
And that's a nice way of saying everything's Philip Lowe's fault. No wonder everyone hates him. The highlight for me is a proposal to set up a separate monetary board to focus on interest rates and inflation, aka the stuff that moves the needle for voters. There'd be another panel to deal with currency insurance and all the other stuff the RBA does on the daily that is actually super important to our financial system, but no one gives a shit about. That change would bring the RBA into line with the central banks of the UK and Canada and a lot of other countries around the world.
To strengthen expertise, decision making, and bring us more into line with world's best practice.
The Bank of England is about to hike interest rates again, with inflation stubbornly remaining above 10% this week. The cash rate currently sits at 4.25%. The Bank of Canada raised rates in January to 4.5%, which is the highest mark in 15 years.
Welcome, friends, to Canada. Canada, friends, loves you.
So being like the UK is not such a great thing, but maybe there's something to be said for copying Canada.
We're just like any other country without the big tattoo.
Unlike the RBA and their never-ending rate hikes, the Bank of Canada hit pause after the January decision to wait and see what impact it had. And lo and behold, inflation actually went down, sparing people a lot of mortgage stress. What a novel idea.
What else did the review say?
Well, it could have been a lot shorter than 294 pages if they just used the meme about meetings that should be an email, because a key recommendation was cutting the RBA's 11 meetings a year to just 8. That's one way to ensure there are fewer rate rises.
A plan so cunning you could put a tail on it and call it a weasel.
As well as meeting less, the RBA should also hold a press conference after each meeting and be more transparent about its monetary policy.
Transparency seems like a good thing.
Maybe, but I get very suspicious when the solution to any problem is more PR. Chalmers says he will work across government and with the RBA to implement all 51 recommendations. In principle, which is code for, we'll do the ones that win us the most votes.
Exactly. I should be president or something.
Either way, it's the biggest shake-up of the nation's central bank in decades, and it's all because Lowe has turned into that weird uncle that no one wants to be stuck next to at Christmas lunch.
Jerry, you listening to this?
Yeah, Uncle Leo.
Because weird uncles have a habit of saying embarrassing shit, and that's exactly what Lowe did to cause the review in the first place. Back in 2021, Lowe said the official cash rate would remain at historic lows until at least 2024.
Our judgment is that this condition for a lift in the cash rate will not be met for 2024.
And then the bank embarked on the fastest interest rate rise since the 80s.
So is Lowe's job safe?
Well, his term as governor is up in September, but Chalmers said no decision to give Lowe the boot or extend his tenure would come before the middle of the year. But it's hard to see him coming back from this one.
'Tis but a scratch.
The government is always at pains to say the RBA is independent, but technically it can overrule any of their decisions. So with questions surrounding Lowe and the RBA's performance, it might seem weird that the review also recommended this power was axed, making the central bank even more independent. But removing it also removes any obligation on politicians to lift a finger and take responsibility for fiscal disasters.
It's not for me.
You see, the RBA can impact inflation by raising interest rates, but government have levers they can pull too. But instead of doing that, which would involve things like raising taxes, aka electoral suicide, the federal government has been more than happy to lay the blame at Lowe's feet. So by removing the law that allows Parliament to intervene and overrule the RBA, no one would even be able to say, hey government, why aren't you doing something about these rate hikes?
That's not me.
Greens leader Adam Bandt gets it, which is not a sentence you hear very often. Bandt described the review as a major major party stitch-up. He said Labor and Liberal are trying to wash their hands of the inflation issue and outsource it all to the RBA and then say it's independent.
I was drying my hands. Well, you're supposed to wash them first. Well, you watched me wash them. I watched you get them wet.
We're still spending up big.
And not just on groceries, $379,310. That's how much money the state government spent per second on the Ningaloo eclipse, trademark pending. The eclipse may have only lasted 58 seconds, but Exmouth was the best place on the planet to see it, so tens of thousands of people, including Deputy Premier Roger Cook, made a beeline to this little seaside town. As any visitor knows, it can be hard to secure a sausage roll at the bakery or a table at the pub in peak season, so the government dropped a lazy $22 million on upgrading infrastructure.
Cash money, I'm gonna make it rain.
McGowan's mob treated it the same as bringing State of Origin to Optus Stadium. Only you're bringing nerdy eclipse chasers into WA and not rugby league players, so that's a win in itself.
It's a lot of money for 62 seconds.
That's true, but we're talking about upgrades to roads and local attractions that should benefit the region for years to come. No harm, no foul. As for what WA will get out of it, well, we can expect a very rubbery figure from government on how much revenue was generated. But eclipse money is small potatoes to the giant money pit that awaits WA if it can tap into the space industry. You might not know this, but WA is currently crawling with former NASA employees who are working at space startups. And this year, a consortium of those startups was chosen to design a rover to land on the moon.
We're whalers on the moon.
We carry a harpoon, but there ain't no whale, so we tell tall tale.
Just as an FYI, NASA's Artemis lunar program is worth tens of billions of dollars, so even a small slice of that pie is a big deal. We also play an important monitoring role on space missions and might actually have the third largest hub of astrophysicists on the planet.
Really?
Don't be surprised. They're building a massive radio telescope in the Murchison right now, which will be the biggest and most expensive scientific instrument Australia has ever seen.
Just got word from Houston. Let's go for launch.
So yeah, the eclipse was 58 seconds of fun, but space will be a very serious money spinner in WA for years to come. And if we ever decide to mount a manned mission to Mars, the federal government already has a bloke in mind that they're keen to fire into space. I'm Ben O'Shea.
For more Up Late, click the subscribe button below.